I still remember the sound of the clock that night, ticking louder than it ever had before, as if time itself wanted to make sure I felt every second of uncertainty pressing against my heart, because that was the night I believed my world was about to shatter, the night I thought I had discovered the truth about my husband, and the night that tested not only our marriage, but the very meaning of trust, patience, and unconditional love. For weeks I had sensed a quiet distance in Hassan, a subtle change in his routine, longer hours at work, distracted smiles, and a tiredness in his eyes that he tried to hide behind reassuring words. And although he never spoke harshly or neglected his responsibilities, a shadow of doubt began forming in the corners of my heart. Marriage, I had learned, is not only built on love but also on communication, and when communication becomes thin, even the strongest love can feel fragile. I tried to convince myself that it was just stress, that perhaps financial pressures or workplace demands were weighing on him, but late-night phone notifications and hushed conversations planted seeds of suspicion that I struggled to ignore. I hated myself for doubting him because Hassan had always been a gentle husband, a patient father to our 2 children, and a man who once promised me that no storm would ever break us apart, yet the fear of betrayal can turn even the calmest mind into a battlefield. That evening, when he told me he would be late again, something inside me refused to remain silent, and instead of confronting him with accusations, I decided to follow him, not out of anger, but out of desperation to protect my family from a truth I feared might destroy it. My hands trembled as I held the steering wheel, my heart pounding with every turn he took, and when he finally stopped in front of a modest house on the edge of the city, my breath caught in my throat. I watched him step out of the car carrying a small bag, looking around cautiously before knocking on the door, and in that moment, every doubt I had ever suppressed rose to the surface. I imagined another woman waiting inside, perhaps someone who had stolen his attention, someone who had taken the laughter that once belonged to me. Tears blurred my vision, but I forced myself to step out of the car and walk closer, determined to face whatever truth awaited me. The door opened slightly, and instead of the scene my fears had painted, I heard the soft cry of a child and the weak voice of an elderly woman thanking him for coming. Confused and overwhelmed, I moved closer to the window and saw something that froze me in place, not because it confirmed betrayal, but because it revealed a secret I had never expected. Inside that small living room sat Hassan beside an elderly widow and her young granddaughter, carefully unpacking groceries and medicines, speaking to them with a kindness I had only ever known in our home. I watched him kneel to the child's level, promising that her school fees would be paid and that she would not have to leave her studies midway through the year. My mind struggled to process what I was seeing, and shame slowly replaced suspicion as I realized that the late nights and secret calls had been about arranging financial help for this struggling family. I stepped back, my heart aching for having doubted him, yet still confused about why he had hidden this from me. When he finally left the house, I returned home before him, my thoughts tangled in guilt and relief. That night, when he walked through the door, I could no longer pretend ignorance, and with tears in my eyes, I told him I had followed him. For a brief moment, I saw pain cross his face, not the pain of being caught in wrongdoing, but the pain of realizing that his silence had caused me suffering. He sat beside me and gently explained that the elderly woman had once helped his mother during a difficult time many years ago, and when he recently discovered that she was living in poverty after her son's death. He felt it was his responsibility to repay that kindness quietly, without seeking recognition, even from his own family. He admitted he had kept it from me because he did not want to burden me with additional worries when we were already managing our own expenses, and because he believed that true charity is done silently. Listening to him, I felt both humbled and heartbroken, humbled by his compassion and heartbroken by my lack of trust. I confessed how fear had consumed me, how every late night felt like a crack in our marriage, and how easily doubt had taken root in the absence of explanation. He held my hands and reminded me that trust is not the absence of questions, but the courage to ask them before assuming the worst. That night we spoke more honestly than we had in months, not about betrayal, but about vulnerability, about the quiet pressures we each carried without sharing. I realized that love can suffer not only from infidelity of the body, but from infidelity of communication when we allow silence to replace openness. The truth I discovered that night was not about another woman, but about the fragile nature of trust and the strength required to preserve it. In the days that followed, I insisted on joining him in helping the widow and her granddaughter, and together we adjusted our budget, sacrificing small luxuries so that someone else's life could be a little easier. What began as suspicion transformed into a shared mission that brought us closer than we had been in years. Our children, watching us pack groceries and speak kindly about generosity, learned lessons no lecture could ever teach. I often think about how easily our marriage could have been damaged if I had confronted him with anger instead of seeking understanding, or if he had responded defensively instead of patiently explaining his reasons. Relationships are delicate gardens that require constant care, and weeds of doubt can grow quickly if left unattended. That night could have been the beginning of resentment, but instead it became the foundation of deeper respect. I learned that true infidelity is not always about betrayal between two people. Sometimes it is about betraying our own commitment to trust by allowing fear to dominate love. Hassan learned that secrecy, even for noble reasons, can create unintended distance. We both realized that sacrifice is not only about financial hardship or physical effort, but about setting aside pride and choosing forgiveness. Looking back now, years later, I see that the ticking clock that once sounded like the end of everything was actually counting down to a new beginning for us. Our marriage did not become perfect after that night, but it became more honest, more patient, and more resilient. Whenever challenges arise, I remind myself of the lesson etched into my heart. Assumptions can destroy what evidence cannot. Love demands courage, and courage often means asking difficult questions with humility rather than drawing painful conclusions in silence. The night I thought I discovered the worst truth about my husband turned out to reveal the best truth about his character, and in confronting my own fears, I discovered the strength of our bond. If there is one message our story carries, it is this. Trust is a choice renewed every day, communication is the bridge that protects it, and love, when nurtured with patience and respect, can transform even the darkest suspicions into light.